received by Dr. M. Nasser, Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor of Calicut University. Because of some emergency, he will join us in the third session. So we are moving to the keynote address. We are blessed to have Professor B.S. Rishikesh, Associate Director and Professor, School of Education, Head of Law and Policy at Azim Premji University as our keynote speaker. His research interests are in the domains of educational policies, assessments, and teacher education. With utmost respect, may I invite Professor Rishikesh B.S. to deliver the keynote address.
Dignitaries on the dais and off the dais, all other educators, dear students, good morning to all of you, and thank you for being here. I would like to thank the management of Duxford Institute to have invited me and my colleague, Mr. Rajgopal, to grace this occasion, which I think is a special one for everyone here. It's the first time I think that many of us are visiting the campus. It's the first time that you all are organizing this kind of an event. So I think it's a special occasion, and I'm very, very pleased to be here and glad to be delivering this keynote address. I was asking Mr. Newman as to how much of time do you think that I should spend in speaking? Because as many of you may have heard, at the university that I come from, Azim Premji University, we do very little of speaking, because we believe that conversations are the way through which we learn. So it's only when we engage with each other, when we talk to each other, that is really when learning happens, and we all will have takeaways. So speaking is always a one-way thing, but then unfortunately a keynote address is always a one-way thing. So I hope you will pardon me for doing this monologue, but I will not go beyond a certain time limit so that I don't bore anyone. But I would love to engage with all of you, post, let's say during the tea time and during lunch. I would like to begin by reminding all of us, and probably also for some of you who may not have heard about this story of the frog and the warm water. Anyone who recollects anything to do with the frog and the warm water? It's a little story, but just the gist of it is that a frog which is there in a warm water never feels like getting out of it. Feels very comfortable. And in fact, experiment says that even when you start increasing the temperature of that water, as from warm it starts becoming hot, the frog continues to sit there thinking that it's getting better and better. But when you keep increasing the temperature and it's really hot, that actually the frog is starting to burn, and that is when the frog realizes, well, this is no more a safe place, I need to get out. But by then it's too late. The water is too hot that it can't really jump out. Unfortunately, I think today on our planet, we human beings have become like that frog. We are continuing to believe that we have created a world wherein we all are comfortable, and this can continue as is by doing whatever we've done in the past, without really heeding to the warnings of people like scientists, particularly working on climate, that we are almost at the edge of everything that we stand for. Be it what is happening on the planet, be it what is happening to our societies. Everything is almost breaking apart, and they're all interconnected. The reason why there is nothing much that we are able to do is because we're all feeling like the frog. We are warm, we are happy, we are satisfied in the roles that we are playing, happy that we've got a job, but then not really thinking about whether that is really the way forward for us as human civilization and for this planet. And I think hence, as educators, it is really us who need to wake up to the fact that this water is no more warm, it's already hot. And we need to get out and do something about it. Either cool down that water or ensure that we really create something wherein all of us folks can live actually in a comfortable warm water and get out of that boiling water. For this, education is really the way forward. There is nothing else for us as humans which we can use as a very effective tool to ensure that we get out of the problematic situation that we have created for ourselves. In fact, that's one of the reasons why today many of us do not anymore speak of climate change, we speak of climate crisis. It is a crisis, right? How many times have we had landslips, for instance, in Kerala over the last few years? And if you look at the previous few decades, you will see that the last few years have matched the previous few decades of the number of landslips that have occurred in a place like Kerala or in other eco-sensitive environments, let's say in our countries such as Uttarakhand. How many times have we had flooding, right? How many times have our cities pretty much gone underground? As we speak, I think Chennai is already suffering its second back-to-back flooding. We've also heard of places like Dubai receiving such rain that the city has never experienced, and their drainage system or sewage system, in spite of everything being so developed, having experienced that even there's been flooding on the Dubai roads. So this is the kind of change that we are seeing on our planet, and hence it is a crisis. What do we do immediately is one thing, but what do we do with regard to it as we plan for the future of young people, and particularly people who are still in school? And hence, since many of you here are students, I would say that you all are also part of the activists who would have to do things in order to ensure that there is quick change that is going to happen, that the future generations are going to find living on our planet a much better experience than what we currently have. It is in this context that there are lots of policies that are coming about. It is in this context that the National Education Policy 2020 was also developed. It is keeping this in mind that what is it that we need to do for the future of our country and for the future basically of the human civilization, that these reforms have been suggested. As Principal Sir spoke of, NEP hence is the paradigm shift in terms of reforms. It's indeed a change of almost everything that we are doing. And it is in this context, in fact, that I am very happy to share with you that even Kerala government established a committee headed by Professor Shyam Menon, which came out with another reform report last year. Or rather, in fact, we are in 24 now, so in 2022 is when I think Professor Shyam Menon's report has come out, which also talks about in a very detailed manner the kind of reforms that is required in higher education. In fact, I was not really aware of this report, and when I went through the 150 pages at a quick glance, I found some very, very interesting insights. And one of the things that caught my attention is apparently when the government of Kerala established the committee, the key aspect that was mentioned to the committee is that right now we have the last bus and we have to catch that bus. If we miss this bus, we are going to miss an opportunity, and that is going to be a lost opportunity. It is with these words that the committee was tasked with coming up with recommendations for Kerala. Right? And it was on a very similar note that the National Education Policy also was established, saying that if we do not do the changes that are required currently, and if we do not have a set of implementation steps, then it's going to be too late for us to change things around. And this brilliant reform basically has many key points, and I would urge, in fact, all of you, those who have not, and I'm sure most here would have gone through this report, particularly those of you who come from management of various institutions in the higher education space would have gone through the report, but I would urge everyone else who's not to go through these 150 pages where some very, very interesting aspects have been mentioned, and it aligns also very well to what is the spirit of national education policy. It may not be saying the same things, but then it aligns very well. So for instance, in the Professor Shyam Menon's report for Kerala, they speak of 5 pillars. And it's very interesting to very quickly go through as to what these pillars are. One of the things that they are talking of with regard to the 5 pillars is that there has to be a lot of autonomy to institutions in the higher education space, so that the institutions create a much larger space for students to be enrolled in. Right? Currently, for instance, in Kerala, though there has been a great growth of higher education institutions, in 2010 there were 28 institutions for every lakh population in Kerala, which today is 50. Right? So almost increase, almost double in terms of the increase. So, but then 50 institutions per lakh is still not sufficient. We were just talking, in fact, before the event commenced, that there are so many students who are continuing to go out of Kerala to Punjab and to Chhattisgarh, and not necessarily only Tamil Nadu or Karnataka, which hence also begs this question as to how large are the institutions that currently exist in Kerala, right? So if there are 50 institutions per lakh population, when you look at what is the average enrollment of each of these institutions, they are very small. They are in hundreds. But if you look at anywhere in the world, higher education institutions always enroll in thousands, because that is the kind of capacity a higher education institution has, and that is what it should be allowed to. For various reasons. I mean, we have our own regulatory bottlenecks and things like that, which limits the capacity that the institutions are able to take on, which is one of the big reforms that is being suggested as well, that there should be autonomy for institutions, and so that institutions can enroll far more students and use the facilities that higher education institutions are able to invest in. For instance, if you look at this campus, for those of you who come in first time, I'm sure we all are quite amazed at the kind of infrastructure that has been set up. And in fact, MD sir was saying that it was all done in 9 months, right? It's an absolutely fantastic capacity. Now, to limit it to only the 200, 300 odd students who are here is not really ensuring that it's used to the optimum level. We should have a couple of thousand students studying in an institution like Duxford. Now, there are many things that are holding back. In fact, when you look at NEP, when you look at the governance and regulation aspect, when you look at Professor Shyam Menon's report, what they're talking of is allow these institutions to enroll students, allow them to offer courses without having XYZ approvals, allow them to offer courses which the students want. Because the students know as to which are the courses that are the ones which are most valuable outside, right? And so when students are demanding for a course, there should not be any regulatory aspect holding back. There should be, of course, regulation to ensure that there is quality, to ensure that what the students get after 4 years, or how many ever years you spend in a higher education institution, what is it that you get, that quality is something that has to be regulated by the government, or by its agency, but not everything else that happens today, wherein, in fact, in the morning, I think also Dean sir was saying that, when you look at autonomous institutions, and he spoke about Kerala, but then this is pretty much true across the country, autonomy is only by name. There are many things that still get controlled by the university. So another reform that, in fact, national education policy is talking about is that through NAC and through other accreditation means, every college should move on to become a constituent college. In fact, Professor Shyam Menon's report says that in a step-by-step manner, Kerala should start by identifying 20 colleges which will become constituent colleges, and then from constituent colleges you go on as you grow to go on to become universities. So this is the direction in which all the policy reforms are pushing us towards, and all this is happening because the idea is that we start creating knowledge societies. Knowledge societies would also lead us towards knowledge economies. What it would mean is that the kind of education that we get is the one that would drive the economy, and it will be based on the generation of new knowledge. So when we want a society which is a knowledge society, when we hence have an economy which is based on knowledge, which basically means that we should be creating higher education space that is generating new knowledge. Today when you look at most of our higher education institutions, unfortunately there is no generation of new knowledge. We in fact in many colleges still see lecturers or professors, whatever we call them by, they continue to have their 20-year-old notebooks from which they dictate and we copy and we write the same thing in our assessments or exams and we get our degrees. That is not higher education. In fact, that should not even be school education, right? And that's really where the school education reforms come in, wherein how do we ensure that school education also is not going to be a rote-based, memory-based, just a recall kind of curriculum or pedagogy, but things have to change, and that's the reason why when the policies, of course, Professor Shyamnan's report is focusing on higher education, but when you look back at NEP, it's starting with how or what should change with children who come into a formal education space for the first time, which happens when a child is 3 years, right? When they come into a nursery classroom, which is the first formal space that they come after their home. What is it that needs to happen there? Currently, what happens is we ask them to sit quietly with a finger on their lip and start reciting whatever we want them to recite, right? It could be ABCD, it could be a mantra, it could be a figure, it could be numbers, it could be tables. But then we are not training, any animal here to just do things or dance as per the tunes that we are singing. This is the human brain that has come to you, and at its fastest pace of growth, between the ages, while baby is in the mother's womb, all the way till about 9 or 10 years is when the maximum brain growth is happening, which basically means that is really when the way in which you facilitate the brain, that is the way that the brain will start functioning, and it is grasping almost everything. So you can do amazing things with the brain which is getting molded. At that point of time, if you get the brain to only memorize, finally that brain will get capable of doing very good memory work. But all the other capacities that the brain is capable of is negated. So in fact, one of the reform agenda from NEP is that ensure that these young children in these foundational years are provided an environment wherein they are able to discover, wherein they are able to learn through experience, wherein they are able to experiment on things. So how do you do this in the early years, from nursery till about grade 1, grade 2? Because if we do that very well, and that is really when we've set the foundation. Once you set the foundation, then jump back to higher education. It is in higher education then that we will be able to generate new knowledge. If we are training a brain, a 3-year-old brain, to mug up and write the exams as per what the teacher has put up on the board, then there can't be any new generation of knowledge that can happen at higher education space. How much ever our teachers say think out of the box, we will not be able to, right? Because we are trained to think within the box. So this whole reform agenda, hence, it's not just about doing it in certain stages of education, it is about ensuring that the reform agenda happens and takes place all the way from the time we have a formal learning environment that is set up. In fact, that is the reason why the National Curricular Framework, which has come out last year, is very, very crucial for us to understand, even though we may be in the higher education space, what is it that is happening in the school space. So for instance, in the early years, the National Curricular Framework is saying play should be the key pedagogic idea through which children learn in the early years. It is through play that all aspects of the curriculum has to be exposed to the students. Because why they play? Because play is a very natural thing, and why they play, children are able to then grasp and do it in a manner that it becomes a sustained learning. Now, when you do that for many years, and if 15 years of schooling you ensure that these kind of progressive ideas are in place, then when we come to college, when we come to an undergrad course, when 20 of us or 30 of us are studying some specific idea that we are interested in, let's say there are those of you in the arts and science and you are trying to figure out something in biology, and when 30 brains which are also massaged in a way to think out of the box, then magic can happen. The new generation of knowledge is a very automatic process, right? So that is the space that we need to move towards. Thankfully for us, we have today institutions such as the Duxford and many other, which is providing that space, right? It is creating that environment in the higher education space where, though we unfortunately may not have got the best of schooling environment, but at least we are given the space and given the encouragement that the faculty is providing, we should be able to generate as much of new knowledge as possible. But the key is really to be able to generate new knowledge. So that is something that I would like to emphasize here, because also many of you students are here. Always think about what is it that we are going to do with the kind of education process that is happening within the classroom, and how is it that will benefit the society in the longer run. This idea has to be in our minds. Otherwise, education becomes very suboptimal. And if it is narrowly focused towards what is the job that I will get immediately after my degree, then one, getting the job may not be the easiest thing. Two, after you get the job, being satisfied with the job is not going to be very easy. Right? So we really need to think about what is it that we can develop as a new knowledge, and how is this new knowledge going to impact the society? How is it that I will be able to contribute to the society with whatever new knowledge that I generate? For instance, you have the PGDM, right? When you're doing a postgraduate diploma in management, right, and you all probably get into the corporate world, right? What is it that you will do, something new that is going to change the corporation that you're going to be part of in a better way? For instance, in PGDM, my guess is most people go to PGDM, even in the IIMs, right? They all go into HR. Yeah. So when you go into human resource management, right, what is it that you want to do differently? How are you going to use the ideas that your professors would have engaged with you here in college? How are you going to take that into the corporate world and come up with something new? That should always be in our mind. Because if it is only about I going in and joining a corporate firm and doing what my manager is telling, and once my manager is retired, I then go and step in and continue to do the same thing, then we are not impacting the society in a better way, in making things better, right? Simple things, for instance, there are many corporates today which continue to call their division as human resource, right? Looking at humans just as a resource, which we can squeeze as much as possible and get the maximum, and once you're done, put it aside, right? How many are thinking of even a simple change in the title of what is that department about, right? How many are looking at it as a function which is about people, not just humans who can be squeezed and thrown aside after retirement, but how many of these corporate firms are looking at it as a people function rather than as a human resource? Now these are the kinds of things that one looks at even from a management point of view. Similarly, I mean, your marketing, your branding, right? It's absolutely cringe-worthy when you look at some of the advertisements that happen today, right? I mean, these are all coming from people who have done their MBAs from the best of institutes, and you have very stereotypical ideas that are put forth in these advertisements. Women in the kitchen, men as doctors and engineers, and these are advertisements of some of the biggest brands. Now, what in education has done to these people who are these brand managers to accept an advertisement agency's design of something as stereotypical as this, where the lady is there cooking in the kitchen, and the father comes and does something out of office, and then there is this product and that is being sold, right? Absolutely something which where no thought has gone. There is no contribution at all to the society. They are not even thinking that this is a stereotypical image which will get carried over by millions of children by looking at it saying that yes, I mean, my mother's work is finally in the kitchen, right? And so when there is a question that comes as to why then education, because finally the work is in the kitchen, there won't be much of an answer. So I'm just giving you some of these examples to say that it is very important for us and to keep thinking whichever role that we're playing in, whatever we are doing, once we finish our education, that there is a change element in it, that there is a progressive element in it. Because it's only through this that we can make the society better. You know, one of the things, for instance, that the Shyam committee talks about is when the higher education space is getting expanded in Kerala, we should also ensure that there is all other sensitivities that are taken into place. We should also ensure that there are enough number of colleges, not just in southern Kerala, but in northern Kerala as well. There are enough number of people, students who are coming in from all the communities, particularly communities from where there are not enough students coming in. So similarly, also about ensuring that there is autonomy not just for the teachers but for the students as well in terms of being able to choose the different kinds of courses. Now these are the kinds of things that the committee is talking about, and for this to happen, of course the government has a lot to do and there are many bills to be passed, but then there is a lot that we in institutions such as Duxford or Azim Premji University can do. It will require a bit of hard work, it will require a bit of thinking, but these are the things that we also as educators, and since there are others here from other institutions, I would suggest that we need to think hard as to what are the exciting ways in which we can offer courses, right? It's very simple to offer, let's say the way we are being offered BAs and BScs in our country, right? You have these combinations. You want to do history, economics, political science, okay, this is what you can do. You want to do political science honors, okay, you can take this and that's all you will do. Or in BSc, this is a set combination. It makes things very easy for the management, right? Setting the timetable is very easy. You can have X number of faculty and you can, very easily get them to offer some of these courses. Students will come, take the course, and then they will graduate and go away. But then, what is it that would create interest and what is it that would help in generating new knowledge is when there is interdisciplinariness in what is being done, right? So you need to have a system where there is an option for a student to have courses from different disciplines. And when the NEP talks about a multidisciplinary university and saying that every university should become large multidisciplinary, it is not just so that universities have multiple disciplines. The spirit behind a multidisciplinary university comes alive only when the university also offers students the choice of choosing between disciplines and are not pegged as art students, science students, commerce students, right? So when one looks at NEP, one also has to go down to the spirit and understand why is it that something is being recommended. Just by saying I have a university where I have everything, I have all the disciplines, doesn't make it a multidisciplinary institution. Multidisciplinary institutions come alive only when the students who are doing their majors in certain disciplines can also choose subjects from other disciplines. So let's say I am a math student, I am doing my major in math, I am interested in some aspects of history and I am able to actually go to the social science department and take a course in history along with my math. So I am graduating with math major and also graduating with a history minor. Now, why would a math student do history? Where is the connection? What is it that would happen outside in the world? That is not something that we need to worry so much. Why is it that that brain, right, of that student wanting to do history along with math, there is something brewing there. Now when you say student autonomy, you are providing that autonomy to the student. That is how you create individual, independent-minded people. Because that brain is unique. It's that person who is able to think that, okay, with math I want to do history, and for all you know, at the end of 4 years, there is something that is brewing which will connect math and history together and new knowledge can get generated. Right? So these are the kinds of things that universities should start offering and we should work towards. It's not easy. How are we going to timetable something like that? If there are 30 students and each one wanting a different combination, how will a management work on providing that? It's not easy. right? But then it is possible. And it is not possible in all the multiple options that will come up, but it is definitely possible from the limited options that we currently provide. In fact, in the afternoon when my colleague Rajgopal is going to share with you the way in which Azim Premji University has implemented some of this, you will get an idea of how or what are the different combinations that can be possible even when you try it at a very limited level. And I'm sure if each one of us put our minds to it, we will be able to offer these combinations. And in fact, when you look at where is it that new knowledge gets generated or when is it new knowledge gets generated, you will see that the people who, for instance, win Nobel Prizes or who are doing some path-breaking research work, they all have been able to do things like this. They are not only having deep dived in one discipline and coming out with something very fascinating in that discipline. If there is a scientific discovery, you will see that that brain has not engaged only with that narrow discipline of, let's say, chemistry, but while researching on chemistry, they've also engaged with something which is, tickling their brain, and they've done substantial work on that area as well, and that is how that particular chemistry research would have emerged. So this is something which is very, very crucial, and for all of us who are educators and who come from institutions, we really need to think about how is it that we are going to make this possible. Now, this is to provide student autonomy. Now, to make this possible from a management side, it is very crucial that we provide teacher autonomy, right? Now, because teachers are the ones who would know as to what is it that would really make their course very exciting. It can't be dictated that this is exactly the material that will have to be taught to the student. It can't be dictated that this will be the core material for this course by somebody else in the management. It will have to be along with the teacher that the curriculum needs to get designed. That is really where the teacher autonomy comes in. The curriculum will have to be part and parcel of what the teacher is contributing in its design, along with it being offered in a classroom. That is really when things can come alive. And that is very important, and many institutions do it. Unfortunately, a large number of institutions still don't allow that autonomy to the teachers. For instance, a teacher would know, a teacher who's, let's say, teaching the subject like biology, would know as to where or which are the papers which is looking at the most recent biological innovations, right? Which are the most recent biological researches that have happened. Now, if you are going to use even a 5-year-old textbook, it is outdated. The kind and the pace at which research is happening across the world. So, but the teacher who is engaged in a subject and who is passionate about the subject is on a daily basis getting himself updated. So if you keep the teacher out of deciding as to what should be the material that is going to be used in the course, and if you do not provide that teacher autonomy, then we are not going to be doing enough of most recent relevant work, and that again is going to hinder what the student is going to learn. And hence, student, when they go out of a certain college without a teacher autonomy, are going to go out of a college without having acquired the latest knowledge. Right? So the student autonomy on one hand, and at the same time, teacher autonomy on the other. Now, again, having said that the management has to provide autonomy, the third part of this mix is we educators, we teachers, being on this continuous learning journey. We have to be on this continuous learning journey, otherwise it again all falls apart, right? And how is that possible? That is possible only as long as we are passionate about what we are teaching. The moment we are passionate, obviously we are not going to limit to whatever notes we made. Every day we are going to have something new. For every year that we teach a new batch, we will come up with something new. And for that, of course, from the management side, continuous professional development space has to be provided for all teachers, right? And that's another policy recommendation that comes in, that management will have to provide a continuous professional development space for all teachers, be it in the school, be it in the universities, right? Now, there are many who say, yes, I mean, of course we provide them space, we give them holidays on Saturdays and Sundays, they can go and do things, right? That's not providing professional development space. professional development space is wherein we pay the salaries, and in that period we also say that this is a time when you professionally develop yourself by choosing XYZ courses. And that's the kind of space that managements will have to provide. And many times institutions themselves can start offering these courses. For instance, with a beautiful campus like Duxford, and I was also being told that there is a hostel facility that will come up here. I'm sure many of us would want to come and do a course that can be offered here, which only, for instance, a college situated in this region can offer. Maybe something to do with the Western Ghats, right? Maybe something to do with, for instance, what is happening with young students here. For instance, I've heard that football is a very, very passionate sport in this part of Kerala. So what is it that can be brought into sports education in the higher education space is something that, for instance, a college situated in this region can offer many others who do not have that, in the culture, right, a sporting culture. How do you ensure that you bring sports into education? Is something that institution like this one can think about and offer it as a professional development for various other faculty from other institutions. So these are the multiple possibilities. I'll just close in a couple of minutes. So what is required for all this is wherein all of us as educators, as students are sure that the reason why we are involved or engaged in education is because the future is at stake. Yeah. Coming back to the first point that I began my address with, that what is at stake is pretty much the human civilization, and we should no longer feel detached to that idea. We can't continue to be climate skeptics, right? It's fair to say that everything is at stake, and unless and until that we start these reforms today in the higher education space in whatever form possible, we are losing time. And as that phrase in the Shyamalan report says, the last bus is here. We all need to jump onto that last bus, and we have to take that bus on a different path, on a path that is going to help us make these changes, help us on this journey of continuously undoing the things that we've done so far, and creating this very new path where new ideas can come in and which can help us create a better world. Thank you so much once again for being these patient listeners, but I would love to hear from you as to what is it that you have as your ideas, and I look forward to engaging with you later in the day. Thank you.
Now, let's move on to an interactive session with Professor Rishikesh BS. May I invite Professor Rishikesh for the same?
Yeah, thank you. I thought that it can be an interactive session with all of us, right? So I would suggest that if you have questions to Professor Susan or to Sir, right, so it should be, I think, an interactive session. That would be more useful rather than only I speaking.
Sir, this side to answer here. For the last few weeks, there has been programs running by Malaviya Mission to orient the faculty members on the new NEP restrictions or limitation of the teachings. So what I got to understand in the 1 week program is the same DPT, the same old stuff, and also the IKS Indian knowledge system. So I barely understand. So is that government like itself undermining whether to get into the NEP should be getting into the people's mind or what course, on what color, and in which form? So is that any clarity on that?
As Azim was just now sharing, right? So there is a hesitancy to change all around. So even if you take the Pandit Mohan Malviya Institute, who was supposed to help us all understand, let's say, any new policy, in this case NEP, there's a lot of work that is required, a lot of homework that will be required, a lot of new ways of trying to share the ideas, giving examples. Now when all that is not done, then finally it will end up with this, as I was saying, yellow burji, I mean, the same notes that are used by teachers. So the same slides across the country, they will use those 5 slides to say that this is NEP, right? Which is basically a problem that we have in our system, and we need to get out of it. And as many of us who can get out of it and put in our effort, give fresh thinking to everything that we do on a daily basis. I mean, that's really where, as I was saying, we need to be the change that we want to see, right? Can we bring about that effort on a daily basis? Because usually what happens is, oh, this is something that I do every day, so I can do it, without really preparing. It's something that comes to me naturally, so I can just come and share something. But instead of that, every time I go to a class, if I'm thinking that can I bring in a new experience, a new example, that's really when I think things will start changing. So I would agree with you that I think there are many agencies, even with the government, which has accepted the policy that was given by the committee, there is still not enough effort that is required. So on many occasions, even I have seen that the spirit of the policy is completely missed out, and something else is being shared and spoken about. In fact, I would say that very little of the NEP has been implemented. There is no state in the country which is, even at the school education space, which has truly implemented NEP. And key aspect of NEP is a curricular reform. And curricular reform in which direction? It's also very important, right? Just for instance, NCERT says we've removed these many chapters to lighten the load of the curriculum, which NEP says. Now that is a complete misinterpretation of NEP. NEP is not suggesting arbitrary removal of chapters as you like to lessen the load of the curriculum. What NEP is saying is we need to do a systematic scientific study of which is the most basic aspects that is required for any curricular development. So you start with that, so that by the time a child has done 15 years of education, you are able to provide them everything. So don't make it content heavy. But that doesn't mean you can just check out what you like, what you don't like, and keep what you like. That's not the way to do curricular content reduction. It has to be done in a systematic way, right? So this way there are many misinterpretations that are happening. And I think it is hence very important for us educators to understand what the policy is saying. So when someone in the name of the policy is actually doing just the opposite, we can then point that out, call it out, saying that please don't fool us, that is not the policy. Right? So yes, I agree with you. I think a lot of us, I mean, we can say that it's a government agency, but it's finally us, right? So I think we need to really understand the simple thing was, why are these reforms important for us today? Why is this the last of us, right? And we go back to our constitutional promise to all, to every single person living in the country in terms of what is the kind of society that we want. How do we ensure a harmonious society where all of us coming from different backgrounds, different religious faiths, how is it that we can live happily and build a strong society, right? That is the core aim in terms of when you look at what is it that we want to do with education, along with being able to build livelihood opportunities, being able to create opportunities which we do not know whether what is it that will be required in the future, and to have a society which is based out of love. And today we know there is much more hate in the society than love, right? So how do you bring in love through education? And you can see, in fact, many of these things actually coming into the policy. So for instance, when you create when the policy talks about child-friendly environment, right, which is based out of love, it is in some way saying that it is this way that we will all be happy. And that child which comes out of a very loving school environment is someone who would want to, actually further expand that. But if a school is, so rigid on rules, and a child or a student is punished for every other thing, and particularly corporal punishment, now what is it that you're creating out of that individual? There is so much of hatred, there's so much of animosity through the school that finally when you come into the society, you wouldn't even mind if there is violence and hatred. Right? So all this, and that's the reason why when you look at NEP, it's a very comprehensive thing. Each point is connected to something else somewhere else, and that understanding that is very crucial. Thank you for that question. Sorry if anyone else wants to add to that.
Excuse me. So could you please explain what is going to happen in the field of teacher education and teachers that may going to happen in the when we are implementing NEP 2020?
So, the other point, I think my colleague Rajgopal is also going to be sharing some things that we are doing. For instance, NEP is not something that has to start off or launch at a certain muhurtam. There is NEP getting implemented even before NEP was accepted by the government. And hence you will see many provisions in NEP which are basically best practices. So for instance, I would say Duxford Institution or any other college which is running a 4-year program has already started implementing NEP. Right? So similarly, there are 4-year teacher education programs in our country which is being run for 25 years now. Delhi University, the CIE started the 4-year program. So in that sense, it is actually a prototype of the teacher education program that NEP speaks about. It's a 4-year program. All the regional institutes of education, they run their 4-year programs. Now what NEP is, the slight change that it is bringing into this 4-year program is saying that these should be integrated teacher education programs, right? And they should be the same program across the various stages of school education. So it's not that if I'm going to be teaching primary classes, I just should be, the regulation should be that I should be okay with a diploma, and only if I'm teaching the secondary stage, I should require a degree, a BA. Right? Or if I'm teaching the nursery, there is no need of any qualification. Now, that is the wrong way of looking at how we develop teachers. So what NEP is saying is, irrespective of whether I'm teaching the 3-year-old or a 18-year-old, I need to be a well-qualified professional. So NEP says that even for a foundational stage teacher, it should be a 4-year integrated teacher education program. And even for a 12th grade teacher, it should be the similar duration program. And in fact, initial few years, almost the same courses, understanding what is education, right? Being really wedded to the idea of aims of education. And then as we move on to the 2nd, 3rd, 4th year is when we start specializing. If I want to teach the foundational stage, let's say kindergarten, then my expertise is going to be developed or capacitated in those 3rd and the 4th year. If you want to be a maths teacher for the 12th grade, your depth of knowledge of math is going to be the one that is worked upon in the 3rd and 4th year. So that's the broad idea with which the integrated teacher education program is being proposed. I think we have about 80 institutions that have just started. 20. Okay. So overall in the country, more and more are being encouraged. But then the idea also is to do it in a pilot manner, in a phased manner. I think all of you also spoke about it. So after the first year of pilot, you will understand, or we will understand, what is it that needs further refinement in the first year program. Because the curriculum is developed, but it's getting implemented now, and so there are some tweaking that will be required. And so in the next couple of years, the ITEP would have a model which all of us can adopt. In Azim Premji University, we've been running a 4-year B.Ed program now for a few years, 5 years. I think we have had 2 batches that have come out. So we've been running it for 6 years. Now we are slowly going to move from our regular 4-year B.Ed into the ITEP. So in the next coming few years, we are going to move into ITEP. And the other idea that NEP is suggesting is that any college or university which has the capacity should start offering these ITEPs. Because we need a large number of teachers, and it can't be just with a few handful institutions which can do this. And since teacher education now from NEP moves into a university space, it can't be offered just by some shop, or the terrace of a house. These are the kinds of teacher education institutions we have in the country. So over a period of time, hopefully those will go away, and becoming a teacher will become a truly professional activity.
Thank you, sir.